talking about the great work of a community of sisters who are not only here in the United States, but are also in far eastern Russia in Vladivostok. So get out your wrist game where they can take a look at where that is, and we'll let you know a lot more about what they're doing. Thank you very much, and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to EWTN Live. We're bringing you guests from all over the world. But before we get to our guests, I do want to mention that we have a pretty modern saint. Young people might not think it's too modern, but you know, those of us who've been around a while know she is. It's Saint Maria Goretti. She was born in 1890, and when she was 12 years old, after having lived a very, very pious life, a life with much prayer and focus on our Lord and charity toward other people. So there was a background of her good Catholic life. But also where she became a saint is when a man assaulted her and she refused to give in to his desires. And he stabbed her to death and killed her. Now, later on, of course, very interesting part of the process. I believe he was present at her beatification. And he also experienced a reconciliation, and she certainly had prayed for him. And it's very important for us. We live in a world in which there is much of that kind of assault, especially against young people, especially against girls. And we have to pray that the lustfulness that leads to that would be replaced by respect for the dignity of all women and all men. And that in respecting that dignity, people seek what is best for others rather than trying to use them and abuse them. All right, tonight we have two guests, and we'll have some others later. They are members of a new missionary community founded only 6 years ago. They're known as the Sisters in Jesus the Lord. They're based out of Kansas City, Missouri, and they're trying to do their part to revive the faith here in the United States, but also in far eastern Russia. So please welcome Mother Julia Mary Kubista and Sister Maria Damiana Lee. Mother, welcome. Sister, good to have you here with us. Well, this is an interesting thing. How did this community get started?
Well, the two priests in Russia who went there in the early 1990s, mm-hmm. Actually, they went just as the doors for Russia opened. Right. They were some of the first two. I met them in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, St. Paul, and heard their story.
And don't forget Minneapolis now.
I won't.
When you're doing Twin Cities, you've got to get both of them in there.
All right, St. Paul and Minneapolis, true enough. And anyway, I heard their story of having gone to Russia. They were starting a new group of priests, but they went to Russia and were telling me some of the things that they were doing, getting the faith reawakened in Russia. When they arrived there, they didn't have a church or a square inch of land or a rectory of any kind. They actually rented an apartment and started out in just an apartment. And this is in an area, they were given by the bishop an area half the size of the United States.
Yes.
To take care of. That was their parish.
Right.
And they had tried desperately for several years to get some sisters from some orders to come and help in such a wide area and so forth, and were expressing that they were not able to find any. One order did come finally from Spain, but they needed more. And so I simply thought, well, maybe there might be some young American women that might like to take up the challenge of reawakening the faith in a very important country, a very large country, a very prominent country, and one that would have great influence on other countries. So I started that way. I wrote a little sentence, very simple sentence or two, in the Father's newsletter. And, you know, speaking of sort of miracles that happened along the way, the first sister that joined me, Sister Maria Stella, her mother was a major in Russian language, taught Russian language, and got the Father's newsletter. And Sister was already working in a parish in southern the United States, and she grew up reading the Father's newsletter from Russia. Mm-hmm. And the very first time when she returned back from having gone to the World Youth Day in Canada, mm-hmm. John Paul II was there, and she finally realized that she had to answer. She was being called, that she had a vocation to religious life. Mm-hmm. And of course, she got that newsletter when she returned home. On the bus going home, she had resolved, I can't wait any longer. By fall, I have to have chosen what order I'm going to be in. And she got the newsletter with my little sentence announcing that, was there anyone out there interested in becoming a religious and helping work in Russia? And I'd like to just squeeze in this little story because I show you how it's all God's work. I can remember at the Institute on Religious Life's national meeting in Mundelein once, Cardinal Arinzi came, and he pointed out very clearly that no religious order has ever been started by man. It's the Holy Spirit. But anyway, I thought one interesting example was that Sister got the announcement. She called, I called, we met. She agreed to come and help this thing get started. And when I hung up the phone from her having said, yes, I'm coming, I sat back in my chair and I said, Lord, what are you doing? She has her master's degree in organ performance. And there's not an organ in all of Far Eastern Russia. But anyway, 2 weeks later, the fathers were given a donation of $45,000 to buy an organ, not knowing anything about Sister Maria Stella.
So your question to our Lord about
yes.
what he's up to
yes.
may have been a little critical of his providence until you see what's going on with him, eh?
You got it. You get used to his tricks.
Yeah.
So,
and in fact, now Sister Maria Stella
yes.
is in there. We're going to have a little time later on in the show to talk to her and to the other sisters who are in
yes.
Russia. We want you to stay tuned for that, but want to get some more of this story in. So, okay. So you've got one sister. An organ is on the way.
her organ, yes.
Yeah, and then you want to jump in there, Sister? Do you know much of that part of the history?
Yes.
Well, I know Sister Catherine Marie came next.
Okay.
But
and then you.
And then
okay.
me.
What's your vocation story?
Yeah, how did you hear about this community?
Well, I had fallen away from the church when I was young. And then when I went to college, I actually ended up being a block away from the convent.
Were you at
And
St. Thomas College?
St. Agnes.
actually, when I went to college, I went to Metropolitan State University.
Okay, okay.
And I was a block from St. Agnes,
Okay.
where the community started. And the Legion of Mary came to my door one day and asked me if I wanted to learn more about the faith.
Yeah.
And so I said yes.
So these are door-to-door Catholic missionaries.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
From
Pretty
St.
good.
Agnes.
Uh-huh.
And so I went. Mother was part of the Legion of Mary at the time, and so I got to know Mother there. I joined the group, and I became confirmed. Then I started volunteering for the sisters, and then after some time, I got the calling to join the community.
Very interesting how that developed. It. In one sense, certainly the fruit of your own confirmation leading to the Lord pushing you towards His vocation to you.
Yes.
Yeah. And so after you've gotten some, did you first form the sisters in Minneapolis, St. Paul area?
Yes. Yes, we spent a few years. Two of the sisters, Sister Maria Stella and Sister Catherine Marie, got the degrees from the Catholic Studies program at the University of St. Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
A very good theology program and so forth. And the sister did she had graduated from college, but she did take some classes there. And of course we had in-house classes on religious life and things like that, so.
So this is how you got going, but now you no longer are in the far north. You've moved down to Missouri, Kansas City,
That's right.
Missouri Diocese.
Yes.
And are you still getting more vocations?
Well, there's 5 of them so far. We have a novice at home that's very faithfully praying for us right now. So there are 6 of us. Another girl joined from northern Missouri, Sister Faustina. We'll be meeting her in a minute.
Yeah, she's one of the
And
sisters over in Vladivostok in
That's
Russia.
right. And Sister Catherine Marie is from Iowa. Sister Maria Stella was South Carolina. So we just
Lord's
have a
just sort of
few.
pulling you together for this great mission.
Yes, yes.
Now, are you also preparing to go over to Russia?
Well, God willing, someday I will go.
Yeah.
But right now, as any organization, they need the support network at home.
Right.
So
So you're working on the support network of
Yes.
the novice and mother,
Yes,
and then
and
getting other
novice.
things ready for the
Oh.
sisters.
Yes.
She's my right hand and my left hand, and I think maybe my right foot too.
Oh, great. Good
Yes.
for you. Good for you. And what are some of the biggest challenges that would face a young woman who is interested in joining your community?
Well, I'd like to say that basically someone wanting to join Sisters in Jesus the Lord would be, we could say, who are we? We are women religious, dedicated, and delighted to bring Jesus to people and people to Jesus, especially in nations where the church and the faith have been devastated or maybe never truly existed. And of course, in order to do that, I always say there's sort of 3 characteristics. The first is we have to be deeply contemplative. If you want to establish, especially in a foreign situation, the church and the faith, you certainly have to have a deep spirituality and be deeply contemplative.
Frenetic activity is not going to bring the faith into any kind of rootedness. It must
not
be
unless coupled with the
centered in Christ.
Yes. I'll speak in a minute about where canoness is actually, and where that tradition helps us. But the second thing is that they would have to be willing to face many, it's a very utterly challenging life. We always say that, of course, with the help of the Sacred Heart and our Blessed Mother, we say it's a miracle a minute. That's how challenging it is.
And the flexibility with it. You make your plans, you need to make plans from A to Z, and when that doesn't work, you start over again.
Yeah.
Make another A to Z.
Let our Lord sort of redirect.
Yes, yes, indeed. And so those are the two things. It's very challenging. But the other thing is it's extremely exciting and transforming because you get the privilege of working in a completely different culture and learning from them and leading them to a very exciting life. One of the joys of working in that kind of a situation, introducing people for the first time to the faith and to Christ, coming from a darkness that we can't understand.
Yeah.
They are so grateful. They are so excited. And that of course, sort of overcomes all the challenges that we have to face day after day.
You know, in Russia, the former Soviet Union,
Yes.
There was a horrendous darkness that, you know, on one hand, we might think about the economic problems and those difficulties, but the attack on religion and the attack on human life, you know, 61.9 million of their own citizens were killed by the government in
Yes.
various ways, sometimes outright execution, other times by working to death. And the gloom that this brought upon me, can you imagine how many,
Yes.
nobody would be without relatives that weren't taken away by the government to be executed or worked to death. Atheism was the most vicious form and most violent form of government ever to be seen.
Yes.
Not Christianity, not religion. Religion is not the big cause of war, it's atheism. And China was even worse, you know, than Soviet Union. So this is, you know, bringing the light
Yes.
of Christ into the kingdom of darkness is exactly what you're doing.
Yes, and they do say if you totaled all the martyrs that have ever been from the beginning till now, throughout the rest of the world, down through all the centuries, the last 70 years in Russia has seen more.
Yeah, last century it was 40 million martyrs.
That's right.
In the world.
That's right.
In the 20th century, out of 75 million in the whole history of Christianity. So 35 million up until 1900.
That's right.
And from 1917 to the present,
That's right.
another 40 million. Not only in Russia, China and elsewhere too.
That's right.
Primarily by the atheistic governments. Certainly under the Nazis as well, National Socialists. So these are very important things that we bring light of Christ into true deep darkness.
A country can't make its contribution to the world, a true good contribution to the world, without Christ.
Yeah.
We know that. And this is the largest country in the world. I once attended a seminar, Marian conference actually, and one of the breakout speakers was speaking only on Russia, Fatima, and why Mary mentioned the conversion of Russia as being important. And one of his main points is that it lies between a very communist world and the West, and the way Russia goes, the world will go, was his theme, sort of. But so it's
well, speaking of Russia,
yes,
we want to talk to the sisters. Earlier, we had a chance to speak with the 3 other members of the Sisters in Jesus the Lord who are ministering in Russia. Their convent is in part of the most Holy Mother of God Church in Vladivostok, Russia, on the Kamchatka Peninsula. This is a far eastern Russian port. It's only about 30 miles from the Chinese border and less than 100 miles from North Korea. Rough neighborhood. So here's our conversation. Hope you enjoy it. Join us now via Skype from Vladivostok, Russia, our three sisters in Jesus the Lord. Sister Catherine Marie Morse, Sister Faustina Goretti, and Sister Maria Stella. Sisters, welcome to EWTN Live.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
It's sort of an amazing thing to be able to talk to you via Skype, and we're very glad to do so. How cold is it over there in Vladivostok?
Well, right now, summer is just starting.
Okay.
It's been in the 60s in the morning, warming up to maybe 75 or so.
Okay, so it's very
in
pleasant.
another few weeks, it is. In a few more weeks, it'll be 80s and 90s for about a month.
Right, and then it comes back down to the cold we expect out of Kamchatka Peninsula.
Yes, right.
So, sisters, one of the most important things is we want to find out what kind of work you are doing. What is it that you are actually getting to do in Vladivostok, Russia?
Okay, well, we've just been blessed to be part of so many things. Our first reason for coming here was to help build up the parish, to help strengthen the Catholics here. And so we pray with the people in the parish. We're leading the choir, working with the parish youth group. Sister's got an apologetics group she started. But then beyond the parish itself, we're able to help in the larger community too. We've been able to offer retreats for healing after abortion, Rachel's Vineyard retreats. There's the 20th annual Catholic Young Adult Conference is coming up soon. And Sister Faustina has been able to work with small children at a temporary orphanage. Also, there's a poor nursing home that we visit regularly.
One of the apostolates that you mentioned is in dealing with people who have had abortions, women who go to Rachel's Vineyard retreats. How common is abortion in Vladivostok and in Russia in general?
Unfortunately, very common.
Yeah.
Abortion was already legalized in the early 1920s in Russia under Stalin. And it was never presented as a woman's right, as something to be proud about or anything like that. But many people consider it to be sort of a sad fact of life that most women will go through.
Yeah. It's basically become one of the fallback forms of birth control. Would that not be the case?
Yes, actually, in Russia, one of the good aspects of communism is that there was no contraception. Mm-hmm. So that made people use abortion as contraception. Yeah. In America, as you know, contraception is much more widespread, so people they're not aware of the number of children that have been lost.
Right. And, with that, do you find that the women, again, they've grown up now for practically 100 years of legalized abortion. Do you find that women are affected personally by this experience? Is it something that is, problematic for them, or is it just part of life?
I think just like in other countries too, very often it can be 10 or even 20 years after an abortion before it kind of hits her, because often she suppresses it because it's such a traumatic experience. So many women thought it was nothing. Everyone around them was having abortions, so they just, but then they feel the same emptiness that women experience throughout the world. Yeah. And when they do participate in Rachel's Vineyard, they do find beautiful healing.
And also, which one of you, again, is doing the apologetics work?
I am Sister Catherine.
Okay, sister. And what kind of apologetics work do you find yourself doing? What are the questions about the faith that come up among the people with whom you live?
Well, actually what happened is we have many new parishioners who have been asking me for a while, Sister, can we please get together and study our faith? We went through the preparation course for baptism and confirmation, but we just have so many questions. And I looked for a long time and was able to find materials, and they had questions on every possible topic you can imagine. And so I send them home every week with a reading assignment, and we have the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And then we come back together, and some of the people that join us are not practicing Catholics. They're Catholics who are skeptics, and they come just for the argument. And it's very exciting because they have every reason to say, like, I don't believe in the Eucharist.
Yes, Catherine,
And
do
we
you
say, well,
give
why?
them an argument?
We just give them a theme,
Okay.
and then they ask questions about the reading, and then they just come back with every possible objection. One of them is a medical doctor, a surgeon, and he's incredibly intelligent, and he has every possible objection I've ever heard, and some of them I haven't heard of before. And I just let the other Catholics are in the room. I say, okay, you studied all week. Now it's your turn to answer the questions. I'm just here in case somebody starts saying heresy. And they go around and they practice explaining their faith. And
Tell about the confession lesson.
oh yes, we had one of our most recent lessons was on confession, and one of the people in the group hadn't been to confession in probably never. You know, they received the sacraments when they were born, and then they never went back for sacraments again, and they could not believe that God would ever forgive them because they had committed some sin in their youth, and from that point on, God is their enemy. But they would go to church. This is just the mystery of the person's desire for God. And on the lesson for confession, we went around and around with all these arguments from this one why God would never forgive them, and confession to a priest. And the parishioners, again, they just answered very clearly and confidently. And at the end of the lesson, I said to this person, I said, would you like to go to confession? And they said, yes. And I said, are you ready to go now? And he said, yes, I am. And so we went right then and there to Father and arranged a time. And then a couple days later, he went to confession. And now he's back in the sacraments and he went to Mass twice last week. And I was just so excited. And he was just dancing for joy. And it's the incredible enthusiasm of the parishioners learning their faith and discussing it together and arguing about it. And they are just such an inspiration. They're really enlivening the parish.
Sister Faustina, what is the kind of work that you are doing specifically?
I'm working in a temporary orphanage teaching Montessori lessons to the children, 3 to 6 years old.
Wait, sister. When you say a temporary orphanage, what is temporary about an orphanage?
These are children who've been taken out of their homes for various reasons. Sometimes it's a dangerous home situation. And they stay in this place for up to 6 months while it's being decided whether they'll go back home or if they'll enter more permanent orphanage.
I see. So, and your work is to do Montessori. Tell us a little bit about some of that.
Yes. So Montessori was started by a Catholic Italian woman at the turn of the 1800s to 1900s. And it uses hands-on materials to teach sensorial skills, math, language, and practical life skills. And it involves one-on-one lessons between the teacher and the student. And the kids love the lessons, and I love teaching them. And the children I've they're very attracted to the crucifix. So each time that I come, one of the children asks, "Who is that? And why is he there?" And so I tell them, "This is Jesus, and he loves you, he loves me, and I love him too." And sometimes I kiss the cross. And the other day, one of the little boys, 4 years old, came up to me and he took the cross in his own hand and so tenderly kissed Jesus on the cross and walked away. And it was just a sign to me that the seed of the gospel is already there in his heart.
Sure. And Sister Maria Stella, what would be the primary religious stance or the religious commitment of most of the people in Vladivostok? Would they be mostly Christian? Would they be mostly Orthodox? Mostly atheist? Agnostic? Where would people be religiously as a wider community in Vladivostok?
Great. I don't know specific statistics for Vladivostok, but I do know that in general there's quite a high rate of baptism in the Orthodox Church among Russians. I've heard 60%. It might be higher already. I would say more and more people are attending Orthodox liturgies. In general, there's still, most people have just been baptized and they maybe don't know their faith so well yet. But yes, the predominant religion in our city is certainly Russian Orthodox.
Okay. And what kind of relationship do the Catholics have with the Orthodox clergy and people?
We would love to have more interaction, but we have been able to form some good friendships with some of the religious. There are some sisters here in the city, some priests. We've had some very good interaction, especially through our work at the poor nursing home. Many of the patients there are baptized Russian Orthodox, and we've had the experience several times when a patient was dying. We were able to contact an Orthodox priest, and he came and anointed the patient. She received the last rites and was able to die in peace with her own faith. So that's been a beautiful way of interacting together.
Yes. Yeah, it's also important for a lot of our listening audience to understand that the Russian Orthodox have the same 7 sacraments that we have, correct?
Yes, we are so close. You know, I don't think there's any church closer to the Catholic Church than the Orthodox Church as far as the sacraments go and traditions and everything.
In the faith. And the love of the Blessed Mother and the love of the saints is very, very prominent among the Russian Orthodox. That's another characteristic we share with them, is it not?
It is. And we had a beautiful experience a while ago. 3 Russian Orthodox priests came to our church just to see it, you know, as they were visiting from another city. And we have a beautiful martyrs chapel honoring 5 men from our parish who we know were martyred in 1938. And there's a beautiful icon of Our Lady of Vladivostok. And when they saw the icon, they burst into song and sang a beautiful hymn to Our Lady.
Oh, nice. Also, you are working with an order of brothers, as well as with some priests. Are the priests part of that order, or are the priests part of the diocese?
Good question. The priests are diocesan priests, and they've started a new community of brothers, and all of the brothers are hoping to be priests. So right now, we're calling them brothers because they haven't been ordained yet.
Okay.
But they're here for novitiate, and then the hope is that someday they'll be ordained. So they're canons regular of Jesus the Lord. So canons regular, eventually they should all be a community of priests.
Okay, all right. And that's working out well, the cooperation between you and this community?
Yes, it is. They're really our brother community. Father Myron Effing, our pastor here, is their founder. And it was when Mother Julia met Father Myron Effing and learned there was such a need for sisters in the Russian Far East that she felt called to start our community. So we have a strong connection.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Sisters, do you have any other questions that you might have for the sisters in Vladivostok?
Well, there's a few ways that they are doing evangelization. And one of the main ways for many years, actually, the government sort of mandated that they do this when they got the church back, and that is put on musical concerts. And I'd like the sisters to explain how in Russia there's a particular way that it helps evangelize because of the way the concerts have to be done.
Yeah, tell us about these concerts, sisters.
Okay, it's really a beautiful thing. The tradition at Russian concerts is that you have an announcer who verbally delivers program notes. So instead of printing a large program, they explain each piece verbally before you hear it. And when they got the church back, the city had planned to turn the church into a concert hall. So they said, you must put on concerts if we're going to give you the church. And because it's a church, the priest said, okay, it must be sacred music then. And so they'll pick concerts, arrange them with a theme. We always have a big one at Christmas and Easter. Sometimes there's one for our Blessed Mother or during Lent. And all of the pieces, there's a beautiful choir, there's an orchestra, an organ, and they choose pieces that fit the theme and then explain, if it's about the Blessed Mother, for instance, before every piece, they'll explain another aspect of the life of the Blessed Mother and maybe highlight the stained glass windows in our church so people can see the stories and be learning. So for many people, it's the first time they've ever come into our church. Sometimes it's the first time they've been in any church. And we have had people come up to us after the concerts and say, I want to come back. So, and we have seen people come and even enter the church after the concerts.
Well, that's very nice. And, do many people come to the concerts? Are there good crowds, or is it just a few people?
Yes, can you answer that?
We have an excellent turnout. Russians have something that I very deeply admire, a true appreciation for real art.
Yes.
And they love this classical music, sacred music. You might, in the United States, you might get a very small turnout for an organ concert. In Russia, their church will be a possible seat where they can buy a ticket. It's filled.
Mm-hmm.
And it's people of all ages and all walks of life. And I've had young adults come up to me and say, "Sister, I went to an organ concert at your church and I just loved it. Thank you so much."
They even send out text messages about a month before the concert so people can get their tickets before they're sold out.
Uh-huh. Well, in some ways, this is what I would expect from the homeland of the Bolshoi Ballet and, of
Yes.
Tchaikovsky and Shostakovich and so many other great musicians. So this is a wonderful part of the ministry that hopefully we would train more of our people with.
And you haven't heard a person sing until you've heard a Russian sing. They have this incredible gift from God.
Yeah,
They're such good musicians and artists.
No, and I've heard plenty of Russian music over the years. My step grandfather was from Belarus, and so I liked Russian music. Sisters, we want to thank you very much for what you're doing over in Eastern Russia, and pray that God bless your ministry, continue to bless it. We need to take a break right about now, but if you'd like more information on how to help the sisters in Jesus the Lord through prayer and other support, you can go to their website, which is www.cjd.cc. cjd.cc. Or you can call them at 816-353-2177. 816-353-2177. And we will be back in just a minute or two with your phone calls and questions from our studio audience, so please stay with us. Thank you. Welcome back. And we are ready for some questions. Are you ready for questions?
I think so.
Well, we
I'll
want you
try.
to come up with some answers.
Yes,
Let's start off with Tony. Hello, Tony. Tony, are you there? We don't have him? No, we lost him. So let's get somebody here from our studio audience. See if we get him back. Ma'am, where are you from?
I'm from Fort Lauderdale.
Great, good to have you here.
Thank
and
you.
What is your question?
I was curious what the age requirements are, or if there's a cutoff for any young ladies that may be interested in joining you.
Oh, yes. Take it home to all the wonderful young women you know.
What's the oldest
Yes.
you
Oldest?
Yeah, the oldest that you, let's start off with there. What's the upper limit?
You know, we really haven't set a definitive upper limit, although in general, 30 years and younger find it much easier, but older women can succeed as well. So we have gone up even a little higher.
And part of the reason for the wanting someone younger is because of the need to learn Russian, correct?
Yes.
And enter into another culture.
Yes.
It's not just going on vacation in Kamchatka Peninsula. You're learning a whole new culture and society.
And even entering into religious life is almost like a whole new culture.
Yes, it is.
And if they've been on their own for, over 30 years and so forth, it's more difficult, but not impossible.
Did you find it a culture shock to enter religious life?
Yes.
Yes. Now I think we have Tony on. Tony, you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Where are you calling from?
Calling from Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Great. And what is your question?
It's a two-part question. The first is Our Lady of Fatima promised to convert Russia, and I'm wondering if the good sisters see that fulfillment being made in Russia as we speak. And the second is, as you mentioned earlier, abortion has been wreaking havoc in Russia for almost 100 years, and almost to the point of annihilating the country down the road. And I'm wondering if they feel that a culture of life is taking root in Russia sufficient to prevent that from happening.
All right. So the first part, did the sisters talk to you about conversions? Because Our Lady of Fatima had told us to pray for Russia.
Yes.
And, because Russia would be the source of many errors. Do you see Our Lady's influence in the conversion of Russia?
I would say yes. I've even thought that the coming down of the wall, the way it did, I wouldn't be a bit surprised, but the Blessed Mother had something to do with that.
Yeah.
And then even in the early 1990s, they're welcoming us in, and the welcome that the fathers received and so forth, and that we have received from them and so forth. I know it's small steps, but I feel very I see signs that our Blessed Mother is hard at work.
And it's not, there are also priests. I know some of my Jesuit brothers are in Irkutsk and other places. And it's because there are Catholics scattered throughout Russia, but also the Russian Orthodox Church is experiencing great return. Many people are coming back, as the sisters said in our interview earlier.
That's right. Few people know that in 1917, when Our Lady appeared, there were 17 million Roman Catholics in Russia. And of course, after the Communist Revolution, that was down to about 4 million.
Yeah.
So that's where the martyrs come in and so forth. But the church has
And
always taught that the church comes alive on the blood of martyrs.
Yes.
So if there's any place where it's going to come alive, I'd like to share something that a friend of mine that I met at the IRL, the Institute on Religious Life. John Paul II said a very interesting thing to a group of people that had come to the Vatican in the about 1990s. And he said that the first half of the next 100 years would be horrible. But the second half, there would be more conversions in the world and the church than ever before, total. So that's what he said. And he was very close to Fatima. So I do feel very strongly that Our Lady is hard at work. And like I say, the miracle a minute that we experience, this is going wrong, she takes care of it. This is going wrong, she takes care of it. I really feel that she's working hard.
And you had mentioned that there were 17 million Roman Catholics in
Russia.
old Russia.
Yes.
But also, we can't forget the large number of Greek Catholics, Ruthenians, and Russian Catholics, and Ukrainians. And they also experienced horrendous suffering. As a matter of fact, I'd like to urge our folks, if you look up, there's a book called A Hidden Church that tells the story of them. It's by a priest here in this country. I forget his last name now, but his first name is Father Christopher. And he's done a wonderful, wonderful job on the history of the Greek Catholics and their sufferings under the communists. And the tremendous number of martyrs that they've had. And you say it's the growth. And I don't think we should forget this is a time of persecution in the Middle East for Christians.
Yes.
That they are getting slammed by evil just as that happened in Russia.
I feel the same.
We have another question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
From Gilbert, Arizona, Father.
Good to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Father.
And what is your question?
Well, I was wondering, Sister, where do you teach the people? Do you meet right after the Mass in the parish? Do you meet in classrooms? Do you go to the homes? Do you feel the need to build school soon? A school for catechesis?
The fathers, after 12 years of struggling, talk about the challenges. They were given permission to build a monastery, and it's a few feet away from the church. And of course, there's where they made some classrooms and room for tea and coffee and so forth. So the classes do take place, both fathers' RCIA classes and the sisters' apologetic classes and so forth, take place right after Mass. And that's mainly because the transportation in Russia is quite expensive. And the people, a lot of the people can hardly afford to take a bus to church.
Yeah. Yeah, and not many of them have automobiles either.
No,
it's fairly poor.
So.
All right, let's take another call. Hello, Pat.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, where are you from?
Galesburg, Illinois.
Oh, good to have you here. And what is your question?
I would like Sister Julia Mary or Mother Julia Mary to address a little bit what her background was in founding this order.
All right, Mother.
Well,
what were you up to before you started this order?
Well, I've been a missionary all my life. I am still a Mary Knoll sister with permission to help this new order get started. It's a rather common way in the church that new orders do get started. And I was a missionary in Africa for many years, and then did some study and pro-life work in Minnesota until I heard about the need in Russia and so forth. And so I just naturally, all my life actually, even before I entered, I was very taken by Mary Knoll because they had a book out there, a 2x2, that they would go out in China. It was their mission area. Mm-hmm. And the sisters got to directly go out and try to bring people to Jesus and Jesus to people. Mm-hmm. And that attracted me. And then as I was in the novitiate, I became even more interested in perhaps being a help against fighting atheistic communism. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. But you also worked in Africa yourself, so
as a missionary.
That missionary heart is not theoretical for you, but something that you've lived your whole life.
That's right. It's a challenge, but it's extremely rewarding, transforming, and exciting.
Yeah,
yes, it is.
Don't you find that you learn a lot from the people that you're working with?
Oh, Father, it's such a privilege. They welcome you into their way of life, and it's so, I could say, it's transforming. It lifts you almost to another plateau. You have your culture, but then when you learn of them and their often very beautiful way of life, their faith, their courage, and so forth, very much so. I felt more blessed from the people than I was ever brought to them.
Yeah.
So
this is a good thing.
Yes.
And Sister, you told us a little bit about your own background, but now that you're in community, do you find that desire for mission is also part of your way of thought?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love Jesus and I want to bring him to others.
Yeah.
And she gets to tell them what we do is part of our novitiate program. It's part of our training of the sisters and so forth. Name some of the things we do.
Well, we study. So first of all, we learn the faith.
Right.
We have in-house classes. And we also study with our diocesan program. It's called the Bishop Helmsley Institute. Mm-hmm. And we take online classes with the Institute of Catholic Culture's Magdala Apostolate. Mm-hmm. We participate in the life of the parish. And so we do pro-life work. We participate in the current pro-life group that's there. We pray at the abortion clinic. Mm-hmm. We help out with Rachel's Vineyard. Yeah. Mother teaches euthanasia classes.
Against it.
Against euthanasia. Sorry. So we help out with programs that teach the faith. As we already heard about the apologetics class. Right. We have an adult faith formation committee at our parish, and Mother and I are part of that. We help with encourage the liturgy, sacred liturgy. By music. Sister Mircella plays the organ, so we have cantors, choir.
So the mission is not going to start only when you get to Russia, but it begins here as well.
The moment you enter.
I just want to let you hear the great things going on if you want to learn more about how you can help the sisters, again, their website is www.cjd.cc, cjd.cc, or call them at 816-353-2177. Well, we've run out of time, sisters. Thank you so much for being here with us. And may Almighty God bless you and keep you and cause His face to shine upon you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And we can bring you this story and so much about what other people are doing only because this network is brought to you by you. So please keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, and we'll pay our bills too. Thank you.